Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Solaris, Product Marketing Manager at Varicent, and I'm excited to welcome you to this conversation series that discusses how the use of artificial intelligence, or AI, can help organizations improve their revenue growth potential. So today I'm joined by two leading experts in the field of AI, Martin Fleming, research economist at the MIT-IBM Watson AI Lab, author, fellow at the University of Manchester, and the chief revenue scientist at Varicent. I also have Joel Shapiro, professor at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, and a chief analytics officer at Varicent. So in the first video, we discussed how generative AI and predictive AI and how those two types of AI can solve different sales performance management challenges. In the second video, we dove a little bit deeper into the use cases and applications of AI from an SBM perspective and discussed different frameworks of AI and maybe how to organize and categorize these different opportunities. So this video, we're going to discuss the development of an AI strategy, because there's no question that AI has the potential to help organizations develop sustainable revenue growth. What's maybe not so clear is how. So with the abundance of information about AI available out there, oftentimes it's hard for people to distinguish between what's real, what's aspirational, and what's realistic for organizations of different sizes. So Martin, we've got revenue leaders and sales professionals watching this, and many of them likely have the same question. Where do I start with the development of an AI strategy?
Well, before I answer your question, let me tell you a story. Imagine that you're a senior executive in a grocery chain. You have 500 stores, and each store has 50,000 stock keeping units, SKUs. That's 5 million items you need to keep track of. To be successful, you want to be able to meet the needs of your customers and have items on hand when they show up to your store. And of course, you want to be able to complete as many sales as possible. So there's a real premium on being able to predict sales at a very detailed level. We recently did a business case at the lab at MIT where I spent some time. And what we found is that these can be very expensive and very costly projects. And consequently, it's a real challenge to be able to match the very substantial investment with the benefit that's achieved. In the case of the grocery store business, there are a small percentage of items that are really subject to spoilage. Think about dairy products or meat products or flours. Many canned goods and dry goods, there's a much larger margin of error. So consequently, in the case work that we did, this grocery store chain actually decided not to make the large investment to build their own AI system, but to use a service that they had internally within their own organization. So instead of making the solution, they were buying a service. And the make versus buy is an important decision that many business leaders are making in this space. An obvious example, of course, is Walmart and Amazon, massive organizations where really they have the capital, the financial capital resources to be able to undertake these massive investments. They have the compute capability. They have the data from all of their sales. They have the ability to hire some very expensive software developers, data scientists, and engineers to put all these capabilities together. So they're relatively small number, a few hundred very large organizations outside the technology sector that are able to justify this type of investment. Think, for example, of the technology provider like OpenAI or Google, which are building large language models. They have made massive investments, and now users, such as all of us, have the ability to use the service that they provide. So that's a case where we don't need to make our own large language models. We can use the service. Increasingly, we're seeing this purchasing AI as a service as a very attractive alternative, and one that we're going to see become quite important, particularly in the sales performance management space, with increasing AI services becoming available.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. You mentioned the SKUs, and it's a bit mind-boggling to think how many different SKUs companies like the large companies you mentioned would have. And I think it's fair to say when you talk about the strategy, we're talking, it's the option whether you want to make or you want to be your own or build or you want to purchase. And I think it's fair to say that maybe not every organization has the means, the resources to do the build. Like kind of what Amazon or Walmart does. Joel, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a great start to the conversation. So I have a wonderful case that I teach in my MBA classroom at Kellogg, and it's not Amazon, it's not Walmart, but it's the wildly different organization Target. Well, okay, right, we're sort of in the same vein here. And you talk about Target using internal data and structures to do things like, create a next product recommendation on a website within, milliseconds, and being able to build in very quick, very smart recommendations and so forth. And, it's a great case that we teach. And then, you're like, oh, it turns out that most places aren't, Amazon or Walmart or Target. But I'll share my own story from not too long ago, just a handful of weeks ago. I had the good fortune of being invited to speak to an executive group in the NFL, National Football League. And I do some work on the role of AI in professional sports teams and team management and team composition and so forth. And I was talking about how AI can drive decision-making in sports. And I don't know, a handful of days before I went down there, the person I was talking to was like, hey, can you make sure that you put in a slide or two about how these teams can build their own AI systems? And I'm like, wait, hold on. That's absolutely not what they should be doing. Like the amount of investment, you want to build your own, that's great. It's going to be bespoke. You're going to own everything about it. It's going to be incredibly expensive. There's going to be a lot of time until you see value. And then you're going to be sitting around with a bunch of PhDs in, machine learning engineering. You're going to be way over indexed on technical staff. So you got to back off of that a little bit. And the fact is, there are lots of companies and tech firms that are making really good tools that are specific and bespoke to your use case, if not to your own organization. And this is where the smart money is going right now, of course, because rather than building all this stuff internally, you have the opportunity to buy AI as a service. That really is what makes a lot of sense for most companies, the vast majority of companies for sure. I do want to just make sure, though, that we don't oversimplify that too much. Because when you buy AI as a service, let's say, you always want to make sure that you're not outsourcing your decision making. And that's where the importance of, machine plus person comes into play. Machines can give us awesome information. Smart computers are amazing at computational sophistication and finding trends and doing things that we ask of it. But using that to make better decisions is not the same as decision-making as a service, for instance. So there's always that, like I definitely push people to say, you got to buy the AI, not build it yourself, but just make sure that you, the business expert, the sales leader, are actually using it to make good decisions and not outsourcing that decision-making, because that could potentially be disastrous and definitely not what you want to do.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, actually. That the separation of the idea of decision making and also the technology. We're talking about buying something as a service. So if I could summarize what I've heard you said, when we're talking about sales performance management, folks who are listening to this, they're thinking, where do we get started? Really broadly, the two options are to build your own practice, AI practice. But what I'm hearing you guys say is that, there's a lot of cost, there's a lot of time. That maybe isn't as realistic for organizations to do, especially not at the beginning. As a better alternative, we're talking about, organizations like Varicent who are providing AI as a service. So, Martin, maybe you could talk a little bit about that, the AI as a service. And what does it mean? Like when we talk about AI as a service, what does it mean for organizations who are, getting started in the space, for the people who are in the sales performance management space?
Well, just adding to and building on the point that Joel has made, the use of artificial intelligence, to the extent that we feel as though, and there's a lot of hype around this, but to the extent that we feel as though, a lot of excitement that artificial intelligence is going to change the way we conduct business, maybe even change our lives to some extent. it's because of the innovation and the transformation that is likely to occur along with the use of the tools and the capabilities. So, for example, we talk about three different areas where artificial intelligence is useful in sales performance management around segmenting accounts and understanding account potential as number one. Segmentation and account potential gives us a much greater ability to understand, first of all, a more effective way to bring accounts together and those that perhaps should be segmented in their own territories. So more productive, more efficient segmentation that leads to better sales performance. And then in the context of those segments, the potential, the predictive potential of those accounts as they come together. And then secondly, territory planning and management and quota planning and management, understanding how better to optimize territories and how better to set quotas that sellers have a reasonable chance of achieving, and therefore we continue to have sellers engaged in an active and aggressive way in the sales process. And then thirdly, pipeline and customer management. Pipeline management, of course, has long been a place where there's a great deal of analytics, but increasingly we can provide much better forecasts of what's in the pipeline and its potential to either close as a one deal or to remain open or to be lost. And then customer management, the probability that we may lose a customer and therefore be able to take early action to offset that potential. We're seeing these tools become integrated throughout the sales performance management process, the SPM process, and that then allows sales leaders to devote their efforts to how they want to transform the management of their sellers, how they want to innovate in new spaces, organize sales teams and perhaps even customers and prospects in new ways, and to focus on the transformation and innovation with really quite useful and quite deep predictive information.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I think so. What I'm hearing you say is that, for those folks, the sales operations, sales compensation folks who are listening on this, and different sales leaders, looking at AI as a service, there are these specialized sort of use cases, SPM use cases that can be supported when they're looking at that option, which I think is great. So I think overall, if I want to capture what we've talked about here within this video, it's important to think about the decision build versus buy. And I think, like we've talked about, a lot of organizations likely are going to be looking at that buy approach. And I think probably one of the most important things to remember, and I think it's worth repeating, is that, yes, it's about the technology. Of course, it's about having data as well, but it's also about having the people, I think, Joel, as you mentioned, to make sure that, decision making, and we're validating, the information that we have and the output of what these models produce. And here at Varicent, and we are on a mission really to help organizations develop sustainable revenue growth. And we have these solutions to help companies of all size build the right go-to-market strategy. So in addition to incentives and sales planning, Varicent offers AI as a service. In conjunction with our data management capabilities, you can plug your data into these ready-to-use predictive AI models, and you use that to learn and to make better business decisions, keeping you on that path to revenue growth. So Martin and Joel, I'd like to thank you both again for your time today. Really appreciate the knowledge, the expertise, and the insight that you've shared. And for those of you who are watching and want to hear more about how AI can transform your SPM processes, please be sure to catch the other videos in the series.